And hello, everyone. It's Saturday afternoon, and I have to say, I think it's been a while since we've had a Saturday show.
I know. I can't remember the last time, Greg. I can't remember. It's been a while.
Have we had one this year, or has it?
No, we've had one this year. I just don't think we've had one in the last 6 months.
Quite a bit. So glad to be here on a Saturday. I'm actually at NerdCon in Mont Bellevue. Of course, Amy has a few things to say to me about that, I'm sure.
For another time. Yeah. Not even actually. Greg knows where I stand, so it's okay.
Yes. So we would like to welcome Marlene Sharp to the show. So, hello,
Hi.
Marlene, how are you?
Good. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
So much fun. So where are you? I don't need your address. I just want to know time zone. Time zone? Are you Pacific time? Are you Eastern? Where are you at?
I am Pacific time. Yes, I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm getting quite good at my time zones. I'm just saying. I have now acquired, I know most time zones, at least in the United States.
Where are you guys?
We're in Texas.
Texas.
Oh, okay. My brother and my parents live in Texas.
Oh, nice. What part of Texas?
Yeah.
Texas is huge.
Houston. Yeah, my parents just moved to Houston maybe a month ago after living in New Orleans for 100 years.
Wow. Greg lives right outside of Houston. I live in a small city. The best way to describe it is I live where Texas A&M University is. So I live in Bryan College Station.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best way. It's the best way to describe it. Because if I just say Bryan College Station, nobody knows what I'm talking about. So it's a small town. I live in a small town.
Yes, and I'm actually on the northeast side of Houston.
Okay.
A little bit farther north. A little bit countrified here.
Nice.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, you went to school for, I think, musical acting as well, from what I've read.
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in drama communications, and then I actually went to grad school for musical theater. So I have an MFA in musical theater.
Ooh, nice. So what was that? Has that always been a calling for you, or is that just something that you wanted to dabble in? What was that like for you?
It was a calling, all right. Yes, it called me all the way to San Diego. My collaborator Blanche here is emphasizing and agreeing. She's often like a Greek chorus in the background, so you might hear her commentary from time to time. But anyway, yes, yeah. My original goal was to act, to perform full time, and it's still a goal. It's just not really the way that I make my living. And but yes, I did study it quite a bit.
Nice.
I also saw that you've done a lot of production crew work.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
a lot of people.
Yeah,
there's some people watching that would like to hear about that.
Yeah, so most of my career has been spent working on development, so it's behind the scenes, not necessarily on set. So I have done. I sometimes tell people that I've done every job that there is to do in show business, because that's kind of what show business is. It's a a hustle, and you do lots of things to stay employed and keep employable. But early on in my career, I fell into animation and what's called merchandise-driven intellectual property. So things that are based on video games and toys, and the content on the screen is really meant to get audiences excited and want to buy video games and toys. so
Nice.
I work on, and I've also worked on a lot of content from other countries. So lots of things from Japan and Korea. I'm working with an Indian company now, and again, Blanche has been here for all of it. She's been in the trenches really for like the last couple of years due to work from home and stuff. But yeah, so development is all the lead up to production. So it's a lot of working with writers on scripts and visual development, like for the look of a show, especially in animation. That's very time consuming and very important to get the designs just right.
Well,
Mm.
Amy would know a lot about working with writers. I have to give her that.
Oh, really?
Oh, I work with a lot. I work with authors of all realms, and like illustrators that do like graphic novels, things like that. So I understand that 100%. I've worked with them for a really long time. So
Are you in the publishing business?
So I work with publishers. I'm in the book marketing business. So I own a social media, digital marketing, book marketing company. So
okay.
yeah, so I dabble in that world quite often. Quite often. That's my day job that I own, and I fire myself quite frequently. Actually, from that, I do very much that, 100%. But
Now, like you said, you're like more getting before the show gets into production and all that. Explain, with you working with writers, do you get the story? Or are you telling them the story? Are you advising them the story?
That's a good question. And it really depends. It depends on the project. Every project is different. So I'm working on something right now that is based on a book trilogy. So the books were already written. It's called Young Captain Nemo. So there were 3 books that were written and published by Macmillan, big publishing company. And so the company that I work for, we optioned the books and we are turning them into a trilogy, an animated movie trilogy. So before we could do anything, we had to option the rights to the book. So I've also had a lot of involvement in business and legal affairs. So just untangling the rights and securing them and making sure everything is acceptable in terms of legalese and rights and copyrights and trademarks, that can often take a while. I think the longest negotiation I was ever involved in was about 3 years. So 3 years before we could even start writing or we're hiring writers or what have you, anything like that. So yeah, and then in the case of something that has source material like a graphic novel or a novel or a life story or anything like that, sometimes the writer of the original material is skilled at writing for the screen, but sometimes not. Or sometimes if they are experienced in that regard, they aren't necessarily an ace at the genre that you're going for.
Mhm.
Or they're busy. So oftentimes it's necessary to hire another writer to adapt the first writer's book and turn it into a script or scripts. And then there are also materials that need to be created along the way to pitch to various stakeholders, such as toy companies or distribution companies, or sometimes even name actors. If you want a big famous actor in your movie, you have to sell them on the idea of your movie. And so you have to make PowerPoint presentations and so forth, lots of visual razzle dazzle just to get people interested and excited. So that takes another set of writers who might be skilled at doing salesy kind of things, PowerPoints and one sheets and posters and so forth. So there's quite a bit that goes into making content, specifically TV and films, before you can even get started with the stuff that the audience sees on the screen.
Oh yeah, it sounds like, so I bet you the process, or I guess I'm wondering what the process, so that process probably, would that take like 6 months, or are we looking at like years for that?
Oh, could be years. Yeah, just the negotiating contracts. So like getting the rights to something that exists, that's one contractual negotiation that's going on. But then if you want to hire another writer or artists, visual development artists, freelancers, let's say, those are other negotiations with other people's agents or the individuals or their lawyers or whomever. So to assemble a team is quite a bit of effort in itself. And I know it doesn't seem very creative just to talk about it here, but sometimes it does take creativity to convince people and to get the budget into the place where everybody's happy. That often takes a different kind of creativity.
Oh yeah, it's like the art of like persuasion and manipulation, right? And that, those two words together, I always feel like are such bad words. Like people associate them in such negative ways, but that's things that like we do those things every day. We persuade or manipulate people.
Exactly. It's just life. It's just Tuesday.
Right? Yeah. It's just Tuesday. Like billboards do that every day, newspapers, walking outside, seeing a sign, social media blasts on your phone, right? Like it's all those things. But it is a very creative aspect to go into it, because you really have to get, and we're not going down a Criminal Minds rabbit hole, but you really have to get into the minds of what your target market wants to see. And that's a whole other creativity. I do all of that. So that's why I'm like, you have to get in the mind of your, consumer or your target market and what they would want to see. And then you can make it creative and stuff in that way. To me, I find that to be the hardest thing to do. Honestly, I find that to be so hard to blend yourself or be a chameleon in different target markets, so yeah, I could see that taking time.
Yes. And then if you work with big name celebrities, or sometimes it's not the person or people you see on the screen that are the stars. Might be a star director or a star writer, or the intellectual property itself is a star because it's so iconic and it's been around for so long and what have you. That takes an extra amount of TLC to get through that. One of the most difficult processes that I went through a few years back was with Paul McCartney. And I can't say that was pleasant. It was quite, took some years and probably killed some brain cells on my part. But yeah, I mean, when you, somebody said this to me, actually, it was the former head of Disney Studios said this to me. He said, the worst thing about working with Paul McCartney is that he's Paul McCartney. So all the Paul McCartney-ness of him comes along with everything that he does, whether it's a movie or a song or an interview or anything like that. And it's just a lot of baggage. So sometimes it can be good. It certainly, you don't have to explain to people who you're working with. So there's that name recognition, but there's a whole lot of other things that go along with it.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that.
I can definitely see Paul McCartney being a headache.
Sure,
And he was
wait.
one of the
Son,
Beatles,
what?
for God's sakes.
Yes, yes, yes. And sometimes people, well, like Paul McCartney and other folks too, you're not necessarily dealing with them person to person. Sometimes you do. Paul McCartney used to come to our office a lot, but we dealt with his people, and sometimes the people are really they're even more difficult than the celebrity. All the surrounding folks and managers and intermediaries, those are the really those are the hardcore tough people.
Well, I think mainly because they do want to protect their people too.
Yeah, and
And they don't,
everybody's terrified to lose their job.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, 100% on that.
Yep.
Now, can we talk about the marketing aspect for a little bit on how you market
Sure,
all this?
sure, whatever you want. It's your show.
Well, technically, you're here with us, so it's our show.
Okay.
So if there's anything that you want to discuss, feel free to tell us and we'll discuss it.
Okay. Noted.
But yeah, I'd like to find out more of the marketing because I think you said that you, if I read correctly, you deal with like the toys and stuff like that coming out. I'd like to hear about those.
Yeah, well, when I refer to merchandise driven entertainment, it it in that label, it tells you a lot about what the purpose of the screen content is, and it's almost as if it's taking the place of a traditional TV commercial. So instead of a company, let's say Hasbro, and Hasbro owns Power Rangers, which is a franchise that I've worked on before. So Hasbro's main business is selling toys, and then also they license out the rights to other things to other companies that have those specialties. So they'll license apparel rights to an apparel company, or publishing rights to a book publisher, or there's thousands of licenses that be could be parceled out. But Hasbro's main reason for being is to make toys and games. So they want to, in order to recoup the investment that they make in the property, because they did pay several $1,000,000 to buy it from another company, Bandai, the original owners, a few years back. They need to sell toys and games. They need to have a clear way to see the future, that they will be earning money and they can justify this investment. So oftentimes they will apportion part of their marketing budget to creating content that's not just a sunk cost. So a sunk cost would be like a 30-second commercial that airs on TV around Christmas time. And after Christmas time, nobody's really going to want to see it anymore, and it'll be quickly dated and irrelevant. But commercials do cost a lot of money, so they can be effective, but sometimes not. So sometimes a significant portion of the budget is put into creating content that will have more of a life of its own afterwards, and can be monetized for years to come. So in the case of like Power Rangers, there is a significant part of the fan base that is interested in seeing those old episodes, and they can be rerun, and they have nostalgia value and so forth. So in a sense, the TV shows and the movies are their own marketing, but yet there's a bit of a catch-22, because if you just put out the TV shows and the movies, and nobody knows about them, then no one will see them, and then so you have to market the marketing, and it's very expensive. It's the sport of kings, really. because there's a lot of costs, especially with toy companies, because they have to not only invest in the physical manufacturing of the toys, but also the packaging. Like every little thing is carefully orchestrated, and that's a huge investment. And then just creating, whether it's if the money is put into TV commercials or social media campaigns or creating cartoons that are going to run on Netflix or Cartoon Network or wherever. It's all an investment before they ever start selling the toys. So, and then it usually takes about to develop and produce an animated show, if everything's going really well and everybody's going, getting along and there's no major creative differences, it's about 18 months to develop and then produce, just to get to the first episode. That's not like a whole season. That's just like to get to episode 1 and then, start delivering the episodes on a every 6 or 8 week basis. But yeah, what else was I going to say about that? I don't know. I'm just blathering on. It's a long and arduous process. And toy making and cartoons are very, very much, the lead time for a toy is about 2 years. So there's a whole lot of visual development that goes into making the molds, the plastic is poured into, and all kinds of things. The look of the toy, the mechanics, if there's engineering involved, especially like all those transforming toys. If you think about it, those are feats of engineering in these little vessels. And if there are electronics involved, that all needs to be worked out. And video games too, of course. There's a lot of testing and quality control and all that stuff. But still, the franchise owner must be mindful that whole time of putting hints out into the marketplace and very strategically building excitement so that when the toys and the content hits the masses, that people will want to watch and they'll continue to watch. So it's a lot of work.
Now that brings up another subject, because that's interesting, because you were talking about the owners and all that. I guess with part of what you do, you actually have to keep the owners calm and patient as well, saying we're working on this, and explain the timeline to them.
Yes, it's often a balancing act. I've worked for stakeholders. Like I worked at Sega, I worked at Level 5, both creators of video games and all the ancillaries that go along with that. But then I've also worked at companies that are either work for hire vendors, like they'll be it's companies that could be hired just on a contract basis to create animation or create a TV series. Or I've also worked with companies that are co-production partners, so they might have some portion of an investment in whatever the intellectual property is, but they won't own it outright 100%. So when there are several stakeholders like that, it gets really challenging, because then all the stakeholders, no matter how big or small their stake is, everyone wants their voice to be heard. And inevitably there will be conflict at some point. It seems nearly impossible to get everybody to agree all of the time. So, and then if there's a disagreement, then that needs to be worked out before you can just proceed. So then oftentimes budgets and schedules get stretched out, and so you really never stop negotiating. You might be done with the initial contractual negotiations and the stuff necessary to get the project started, but it's like what Amy was saying, it's like negotiating all day every day. Even just to order lunch is often a big huge deal.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's also one of those, like you kind of tapped on it too, where it's you can't make everybody happy, and so you're just trying to find a middle ground that everyone can tolerate. you know?
Yes.
It's like, okay, well, this doesn't work, but what can you tolerate? Like, what would be like, that's okay. Like, doesn't bother you either way. I find that to be this, from my experience, like the hardest and the most time consuming, because that can take forever, because my personality, like I gave you my disconnect, my personality does not mesh with everybody. And so sometimes you're just like, I don't know if we can find a middle ground. Like, we need to, but I need a break from you. I just need a break, like that's, no, yes, I can only imagine. And from what I hear you saying, it sounds like that some of those things is what takes it. So I don't know. I like to say I'm just the person that puts out fires. That's my job.
You nailed it. That's it. We're all just firefighters. That's
right?
it. In different costumes, but we're all fighting fires.
Exactly.
I'm sitting here thinking y'all's medicine cabinet must be filled with Tylenol, ibuprofen, etc.
Heavily medicated. Yes.
Yeah, that's how people function. I love it. So how did you fall into your area of work that you do?
It was through temping. When I first came to Los Angeles after graduate school, I wanted to perform, and I did a lot of that, but I knew that I wasn't gonna, at least at first, be able to make a living off of it. So I did some freelance production, production coordinator, production assistant type of things, and then I hit a wall with that where, yikes, I need something else. I can't just live so speculatively. So I registered with a temp agency that placed people in, it specialized in entertainment jobs. So that's one thing. I don't know how prevalent they are in Los Angeles now, because COVID messed everything up. And
Yes.
I'm guessing that a lot of the support staff work remotely now, and so people don't actually necessarily go to offices. But anyway, I registered with a temp agency that placed me physically in different entertainment offices all over the city. And then I had told them when I registered that I was looking for a permanent position. If anything came up, I would like to be considered for a full-time assistant type position, because I wanted to act, but I was also interested in writing and producing and other aspects of the business. So that's what I did. I put it out there, told the temp agency. So for a couple of weeks, they placed me at different small production companies, one of which was Larry Flint's Hustler magazine. Don't know how that happened, but anyway, I did a couple of days there. And then they placed me at a company called Renaissance Atlantic Films that was a very small consultancy owned by one of the gentlemen who was responsible for taking Power Rangers from Japan and bringing it to the rest of the world. So his name is Frank Ward, and he had been the president of Bandai America. And when he retired from that, because he was so successful with Power Rangers, he was awarded a lucrative consulting deal with Bandai. And so he advised them on all of their shows that had toy lines that were being sold through the TV series, essentially. So I landed in his office. I temped there for a couple of weeks, and then he offered me the assistant position, and so I ended up working there for over 5 years. And he only had 2 employees in the beginning, so it was myself, and there was a director of development, and then and then Frank. And then the director of development left after about 1.5 years. So then I inherited her job and other stuff. And so, and then I kind of just stuck in that world. Boys merchandise driven entertainment. So Power Rangers is live action, and some of the shows that we worked on there were live action, but we also did a lot of animation too. And so, after that, I worked at Disney for a couple of years. I actually worked in business and legal affairs at Disney as a legal assistant. And then went to work for a Korean animation studio. I was their LA person. That everybody else worked in Seoul, but I ran their LA presence, and I was responsible for pretty much anything that required a native English language speaker. I took charge of. So anything from contract negotiations to um, language language localization, because they would create a lot of content in Korean, and then we would have to either dub it or subtitle it for other markets, and then I had to negotiate deals for distribution and so forth. So it was a lot of different things, but getting that start in Frank's office on Power Rangers and all the Bandai properties, that was a very good education, I guess. It was like a specialized kind of film school, because making kids content is different than making stuff for grown-ups because of all the merchandise that's involved.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna ask the elephant question in the room. Are you a big Power Ranger fan, or like a big Sonic fan, or those just
No.
Okay, nice.
Hell
Nice. I'm
no.
not either. So nice.
No, I mean, I have come to love them. I've come to love all my children, all of my screen children. But I can't say that I was born as a fan of that. I did play games. I played video games when I was younger, and I enjoyed them. But I like the brainier ones, like Carmen Sandiego and
Yeah.
Scrabble, Jeopardy, those types of things. And I remember telling somebody at one point when I was younger, like, "Oh yeah, I'm a gamer. I play Scrabble every day." And the person I was talking to was like, "That's not a gamer." And I was like, "Yes, it absolutely is, because it's a game." And then there was an argument ensued, and I probably lost because I'm terrible at conflict. But anyway, yeah, my personal taste in entertainment is not that I like a good cartoon. I like good animation, but what I love more than that is stand-up comedy and female-driven stuff. I'm like the girliest girl you'll ever meet, so I don't really like Power Rangers. Does not speak to that aspect of me.
Yeah. No, I get that, because I think I love that though. Like, you would argue Scrabble is a game. Like,
It is.
love that, right? Like I played like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. Like, those were my games, right? And it's so much has changed since then. Like Halo, right? Halo used to be really big, so like so much has changed since then. But I have two daughters, right? I have a 3 and a 2-year-old. And they've recently gotten into the Powerpuff Girls, which is what we were for Halloween, right? And I forgot how like great that show is. So I'm
yeah, so clever.
Remade it. I didn't even realize they had remade it. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, this isn't the theme song I remember. And then I kicked it back old school, to the OG, and I was like, yeah, this is it, So I remember all of those, and I love those. So like in terms of cartoons and stuff, but you mentioned that you love comedy, okay? And I am a huge fan of that, because I always claim on here, Greg likes to give me a bunch of crap, but I am the comedic relief. I laugh at myself. I tend to think I'm funny. But who is your favorite comedian?
Oh, well, my favorite of all time is Carol Burnett. She is just legendary, and as far as I'm concerned, nobody can touch her talent. And then as a close second is Vicki Lawrence, who was also on the Carol Burnett show, and I really respect the two of them, especially Vicki Lawrence, because when she was a very young woman, she played elderly characters. She played the character of Mama on the Carol Burnett show, and also on the show Mama's Family for a number of years. And truth be told, that is my talent as an actor. When I was in high school, and my high school drama teacher had to write letters of recommendation for me and other seniors, trying to get into drama school. He wrote on my letter, Marlene is adept at playing the elderly. And so there aren't many people who have that talent. So um, it's hard also to get cast when you're not when you're not authentically elderly, and and that's your talent. So I always loved the fact that Carol Burnett and Vicki Lawrence, a big chunk of their careers was entailed playing these unusual characters. I found that relatable. So yeah, I love them.
I love that. I love that. I asked that because I was packing yesterday to come to my mom's. That's all her fabric in the background. And I was watching the Gabriel Netflix special. He goes by Fluffy. And I just forgot, like, just sitting down and like watching a comedy skit or anything like that, how just like, I don't know, to me it was so therapeutic and like de-stressing. I was like, man, this is so great. So you mentioned that, and I was like, man, I wonder who yours are. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
those two are. I don't feel like anyone will ever come anywhere near them.
Yeah, and I guess I should have. I love stand up comedy as well as sketch, and pretty much anything, any kind of comedy I like. But as far as watching comedy specials on Netflix and so forth, I really like Ricky Gervais and Jerry Seinfeld and Kevin Hart, and and I like Tina Fey too. She's not a stand-up, but I think she's very talented as well. I have to say I have a little bit of a grudge because I feel like she's having the career that I should have had. But I can I'm not going to begrudge her success. I think it's well deserved. So
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. Makes sense. Like, that could have been me. Could have been me. No, I totally I tell Greg all the time, because when I'm not on this show, or I have to be really comfortable with people, but I do I do accents and stuff. So I tell Greg all the time, like, I have missed my I should have been a voiceover actor and everything. And so I tell him all the time. He's like, well, it's never too late. And it's kind of one of those, like, no, I'm just gonna bask in everyone else's voiceover success and pretend it's me. It just works wonders for me in my mind. I manipulate myself and persuade myself that that is me that's doing them. So no, I understand that 100%. So I have this question, Greg, and it's bothering me, so I'm gonna ask you, Marlene. But did you just, because I'm very, like, I'm fascinated, but I'm like envious at the time. Like, when you decided to like pursue acting and stuff, did you just like pack everything up and like move to California and move to LA, or were you like, did you have things lined up first or anything? I'm envious of those that are kind of like nomads. They're just like, I'm just gonna go here and we're gonna do it. I'm not that kind of person, and I wish I was. So I'm dying to know that.
well, I always wanted to be an actress. So, like, I was born this way. When I was a baby, I would tell my parents, only I'm on the stage, you're in the audience. So,
Oh, I love it.
so
I
and it's very strange because I don't really come from a show business family. I was born in New Orleans. There wasn't show business around me, but my parents did take me to a lot of children's theater, so I think that might have rubbed off. And I watched a lot of TV. So when I when I was about 3, I started asking my mom about Sesame Street because I wanted to be on Sesame Street. And we'd drive by the PBS affiliate in our town, and my mom would say something about, like, oh, Sesame Street. And I was like, well, can we go in there? Like, can I do it? And then my mom had to try to explain to me that it wasn't, she had to, in her way, she had to try to explain it. So then I understood that I needed to move elsewhere to pursue it. But tried to find show business as much as I could in New Orleans, and at a certain point in my life, more things started to do location filming there. So I had a little bit of that, but I always did theater and tried to do what I could in my surroundings. But I wanted to go to college out of state. I wanted to move to Los Angeles for college, but for a variety of reasons, I didn't do that. So then I was like, okay, for graduate school, I am moving. I'm going to either New York or Los Angeles. And San Diego State was my safety school.
Okay.
And so I went and I auditioned at all these schools, didn't get in any of them except for San Diego State. So I was like, well, okay, I guess that's where I'm going. So that's where I went. And that eased the transition a bit, because then I was in school here and was able to establish residency, which is important for tuition purposes. Anyway,
Yes.
after a year, I didn't have to pay. I only had to pay 1 year of out-of-state tuition instead of 2 years of out-of-state tuition.
Nice.
And then when I was in school at SDSU, my colleagues and my classmates, we'd drive up to LA to see shows. We'd audition for stuff sometimes, and also toward the end of my program, I was interviewing for jobs and so forth. So now I did briefly move back to New Orleans during an existential crisis early on. It was, again, a variety of reasons that caused this. I went back to New Orleans for a year and a half, and I quickly regretted it. So I tried to make the best of that year and a half, and then I was just like, I'm going back, and I'm going back to LA, not San Diego, not Orange County, not anywhere else. I'm going to LA, and I am not going to leave no matter how bad it gets. I will do whatever it takes. And so then I came back, and that was another. I had a couple of cross country moves which were unpleasant, but anyway, I did that, and then I've been here ever since, and that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So
I love that though, because you had like your passion, you pursued it, and you figured out ways to make it, and then doing what you're doing today, you got from doing like going through a temp agency and just landing where you were meant to be. So things just happen, which I hear that. Not okay, I'm gonna take that back. Not that I talk to a bunch of people in like Hollywood or anything, because I don't, but that tends to be like the story that I hear is like it was just like an opportunity that happened and you just stumbled into it and you do all those things, and so like you never really know what's gonna come about from something, what you
that's true. That's true. And when I got that temp job, I had no idea that the toy industry was so closely linked to show business. I had no idea that was a thing. And so I learned that. And then that opened up more opportunities for me just because I was aware of it. And also I learned that most major media companies from other countries have some kind of a presence in Los Angeles, a branch office, or if they don't have an actual office, they'll have a representative or freelancers who are working with them in various capacities. And so if you consider all the opportunities that exist that are not just the American companies that everybody's heard of, there are a lot of opportunities out there. And most of my career has been working for companies that are overseas. So I've worked for a number of Japanese companies, Korean companies, worked for a Jordanian company. I'm working with an Indian company now. So, and that was another thing that I had no idea. When I was growing up and when I was in school, I had heard of the same big media companies that everybody's heard of. And those are the places that I thought, oh, well, if I get an office job, it'll probably be at one of those places. And the only really traditional place that I worked for a couple of years was Disney. Otherwise, it's all been international companies with a branch office in LA.
Yeah, that's so cool though. Like your resume is so cool though, because you mentioned, the company that brought the Power Rangers over, and then Sega, and then Disney, and all of these other ones, that you've been a part of, or you've worked out even temporarily. I mean, that is just outstanding in and of itself. Like I find those things to be so fascinating, like not even if what you were doing there is fascinating, even if you were just like a character, I'm like, that is the coolest thing.
Wow, thanks. I need to get you to talk to my parents because they still don't understand what I'm doing. But
it's one of those things. I don't know. I'm a very firm believer that like everything that you go down, like I have a degree in psychology, okay, and I was going on the path of doing clinical psychology. I wanted to work with like inmates, and I really wanted to study their brain. Primarily serial killers, like, or just killers in general. Okay,
I
so
love that.
right, yeah, okay, so that's what I thrive on. I love that. I want to know what makes their like brain tick differently than ours. Like that's the whole like thing I was on, right? I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be in school like till I die. It's my thing. And then I got married. My husband wanted to go back to school, and so then all that went on. So now I'm in like book marketing, right? Like completely opposite. I've been doing it for such a long time now, but it's like just cool things like evolve. Like I don't feel like I use my degree every day, but I'm very good with people. So maybe I do. I don't know. But I think it's so cool, like different seasons and stuff, and what life really brings about. So I'm telling you, I think it's the coolest thing. When Greg told me you were coming on and all this stuff, I was like, this is gonna be such a fun, cool conversation. Like,
well, thank you. Yeah, I can put a glossy spin on it for the interviews and so forth, but it is a struggle. Like no one's life is easy. I really, and the older I get and the more I work in the business, and the more people with name value who I encounter, I realize that they're having struggles too. It's just they're presenting a certain angle of themselves to the public, and you might not be aware, but it is interesting. And one of my favorite expressions is taking lemons and making lemonade.
yes.
And I feel like that pretty much encapsulates my career, because I got to tell you, I was not jumping for joy when I landed at the Power Rangers company. I was like, this is humiliating. I cannot tell people that I work on the worst TV show ever. Like the production value is embarrassing. Like I considered myself to be an artiste. I studied broadcasting and performance, and all the bells and whistles that go into making fine artistic works of media. And Power Rangers was not it. It did not fit my standards. And so I was like, oh God, this is humiliating. And pretty much every minute that I was working at that company, I was looking for another job.
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of uncomfortable things there. Part of my job, which I didn't realize that I signed up for until I got there, was doing personal errands and so forth for my boss. And so I was like picking up laundry and buying presents and getting kids from school while I was negotiating contracts and dealing with writers and producing video and whatnot. And that's another thing that I didn't think I would come out of school with a master's degree, a terminal degree. You can't get any higher than a Master of Fine Arts in performance. So I had a chip on my shoulder, and then here's somebody telling me to go get coffee and pick up his dry cleaning. I mean, and a certain bit of that has persisted. I mean, it's so like, again, I can put a positive spin on things, but there have been lots of 2 steps forward, 100 steps back.
Yeah.
And I think that also happens to people. I read a really interesting, funny story about the actress Shelley Winters, and this sort of encapsulates that whole few steps forward, a million steps back. she, at some point in her career, toward the end of her career, she was back to auditioning, just like any journeyman actor would have to do. And so she had an audition for a film. I don't even know what it was. And she showed up at the audition and they said, "We need your photo and resume." And she's like, "Well, I'm Shelley Winters." And they're like, "Yeah, we don't know who you are." And she was older at that point. So she left. She came back with her 2 Oscar statues and she's like, "This is my photo. This is my resume."
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if she was cast or not, but when I read that story, I was like, good Lord. I mean, you would think a lady with 2 Oscars, that's it. That's all she wrote. That your life is set and you're on easy street for the rest of your life, basically.
Right? Yeah.
But no. And I know Shelley Winters has a reputation for being quite a spitfire, but good grief. I mean, if that was me, if I was a 2-time Oscar winner, having some, kid asking me for my photo and resume, hell yeah, I'd go home and get my Oscars and slam them on the table too.
I'm telling you, do you not know her resume? Because here it is. Okay.
Sure.
I love that. I love that story. That's awesome.
Isn't it great? Isn't it great? So I'm just dying for my moment to go, here's my resume.
There you go.
I just need the Oscars though. I don't
No,
have
it's
those.
coming. It's coming though. I'm telling you, that is the ultimate. That is the best. I love that. That is. I'm gonna do that to you, Greg. I'm gonna take the awards that I won, just be like, here it is, okay? Take that. Oh, I love it.
Can I throw mine back at you?
No.
No.
At your own risk, Greg. At your own risk.
Yeah.
She's not known to slice throats. So.
That's not. No, don't scare her. I have not hurt anybody by slicing nothing of them. Don't scare Marlene. He doesn't mean it. Okay, I am hurt like harmless. Okay, They
Okay.
let me out today. Okay,
It's all right. I'm not scared. Look, I survived Paul McCartney. I'm pretty sure you're not.
okay.
You're
I
not
feel
Paul
a lot better.
McCartney, so
I feel a lot better. I truly do. I'm like, no, this is good. This is good. I like it. That's a good one.
But I do want to thank you for coming on our show today.
my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It's been really fun.
Actually, yes, and it was quite a learning experience, learning all the aspects. I don't think we've ever had this aspect on our show, which was quite interesting.
So much.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great. Thank you for listening to my voluminous commentary. Inventing is actually what it was, I suppose. It was inventing.
It's basically like a panel that you would find at a Comic-Con, so it's very informative and a learning experience for anybody who watches.
I had the best of time. I have learned so much. Yes.
Awesome.
And me and Marlene have so much in common. We put fires out, so it's great.
Exactly. It's different fires, but the same technique.
Exactly.
Yep.
I like it.
But again, I would like to thank you for being on our show. And we don't have a show next Tuesday because I'm actually getting the procedure done. So our next show would be, is it Thursday next week? Yeah, it's Thursday next week. So until